Side Decorating Center. Good morning. Welcome to hour number 2 of the Art Lewis Show. Glad you're with us this morning, and also with us this morning from the Midland Business Alliance. We say good morning to Tony Stamas. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Art. Great to be with you.
Good to have you with us this morning. I want to start with a question about the state budget and how it impacts what you do in Midland. Was there much impact this year with the budget passing?
I think with different organizations, I think they're all kind of impacted differently. We've got a work group that's working with regional partners on child care, and there are different pieces of that. Certainly we work with the MEDC and how their budget changed. I think the biggest impact, I know we've talked a lot about our infrastructure effort, how we build flood resiliency, and Representative Schuette was able to get $10 million to the city of Midland towards flood resiliency, and that was really enormously helpful. Knowing he's a huge Lions fan, I compared it to being. I said we don't have a state senator currently, so it's like Tesla with the Lions. You did it one-handed, and we're able to move that through the process. So I think he used that analogy, and I thought it was fitting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, and I know this is outside your realm of control, but my understanding is the water is beginning to return to Sanford. Is that right?
I haven't heard of the water, but I know that they're looking at having, I think, the physical structures completed by the end of this year. And I think they sent out an update last week, and looks like they're right on track for that. And then I think, I don't know exactly what the timing is in terms of the water coming in, because a lot of times right now they're trying to do work in terms of the shoreline, in terms of the lake bed, ahead of the water coming in. But yeah, it sounds like they're on time, and I can't wait till next year. Going across on US 10 there and seeing that lake back is just going to be this side of a miracle. And and that was
tourism life gets back to normal and all that good stuff.
Absolutely, and that's going to be, it was still the three other lakes that are different stages of restoration. But Representative Schuette was able to get nearly $10 million for that project as well. And I saw recently Congressman Molinar was able to get some additional resources. So hopefully, reduces the overall cost of the project, which obviously I think can really be helpful to those who live there and are looking at the assessment. So it's exciting that's really moving forward.
So if we look at the Tony Stamas wish book, what's on your list that needs to be done now? What are you working on right now?
Yeah, there's never a short list. It doesn't seem to ever reduce, but it's good things. I mean, I think things we've talked about housing. Okay. I think that Midland is an area that people want to live in. I think the Great Lakes Bay region, but we have to offer them housing options. I mentioned child care. That's just such a tremendously challenging issue in terms of having the facilities, having the workforce. I think those are really key pieces, because we're out there kind of in the traditional way looking to attract businesses, and looking at businesses. We've got a lot of we've got global companies here already. What other companies from across the globe would be interested in coming here? I think we have some really unique advantages with the iPark and kind of the legacy, and even all of our regional assets. So we're kind of focused on that in the traditional mode. And you're always okay, how do you help? Because most of the growth comes from businesses that are already here. How do you help them grow? And we've seen DuPont doing an expansion. We saw Corteva, doing an expansion, and so that's great. That's that's kind of it's companies that are here that know the community, that are well known, but I also think there's an opportunity to bring in other companies as well. We had a ribbon cutting a couple of weeks ago for Qnity, which is a spin from DuPont electronics division. So they've got about 45, 50 folks here who have been here for a long time, and so we were able to kind of do a ribbon cutting. The mayor was there and celebrate, and so we've kind of gotten to know a lot of new entities, but many of them are familiar faces to our community.
If there's a negative, and maybe that word's too strong, the biggest player in the region, Dow, is going through some tough times. How's that impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, and Jim Fitterling is always very upfront and forthright, and I think it's a challenging cyclical time for that whole industry. And when you kind of look at others that are in there, but I think that team and that leadership and is living up to a legacy that's been over 125 years, and they're creative and they're looking and I think finding solutions, and so it doesn't happen overnight. I think there was a positive reaction to the last quarterly reports. And, I think it takes time, but I think this team is going to, have the action plan, and they're already putting it into place and kind of evaluating things that really, are on a global basis, what's happening in Europe, what's happening in, with all these different pieces. But, confident, and we kind of stand ready to help. We want to, we want to get more folks, as I mentioned, in the iPark, and that's kind of a win-win of, you've got unique services there that just you don't see in lots of other places that are readily available. So having an opportunity there, and then reducing cost for not only them but even for the other tenants, which I think then even makes it more attractive. So I think they're they're moving forward. They got a great leadership team, and I think they've weathered some significant storms over the years, and completely confident in their ability to move it forward.
And we have to remember, and you mentioned it, but what happens in Europe impacts what happens in Midland.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does.
It's a global company.
It really is. And so they kind of have to navigate that and figure out, okay, what adjustments needs to be made. And I think they're in the midst of doing that. And I think we'll come back strong and vital as they've always have been.
Let's talk about downtown Midland for a moment. How are they doing with occupancy and businesses?
Yeah, I think, we had just an amazing summer with the concert series and everything. I just, love, my wife and I would go down there on a Thursday, Friday night, and just thousands of people downtown. And so I think there's a real vibrancy to the downtown. There's some occupancy, but I think there's some folks looking at filling some of those, there's some big spaces. The Oddfellow building is being redone, which is the oldest building in the downtown, and we're thrilled about that. The Dimitrovs are leading that project, and it's a historic building, and I think that's really going to be wonderful to see that completed. So it's exciting. We had a couple weeks ago, we hosted the Chamber Professionals statewide conference, and it was in downtown Midland, and so people loved it. They went to the restaurants and had just heard rave reviews. I did talk to one of my colleagues from West Michigan, and I was talking to he and his wife, and she said, I like to go to these because I love to see different cities and she said, so I went through downtown Midland, I did my shopping, and she said, now I don't know that you can extrapolate this to everybody that was here, but if they all spent as much money as I did in downtown Midland, you guys did really well by this visit. And I said, well, that's good to hear.
Get her name, send an invite every 6 months.
Absolutely.
All right, hang on, Tony. I'm going to take a break, and we'll come back. We're talking to Tony Stamas. He directs the Midland Business Alliance, and we'll talk more about that when we return.
My name is Angie Gouja. I've been an
look for, but I think it really was this proof of concept that it was all hands on deck, and how do we help our businesses? How do we help them to navigate through this? To survive, to move forward, and to grow. And it really was. Just the whole team worked together on that. And, we do different things. On the chamber side, you tend to have events, Wake Up Midland, and, there's a connectivity and economic development. We focus on what I was talking about earlier. But really, the mission is the same. How do we help Midland to grow and thrive and kind of continue to build, because we've got such a great legacy, and then certainly partner with our whole Great Lakes Bay region, because it's what helps any part of that region helps us all.
So the organization, even though it's one organization, it's the sum of its parts, basically?
It is, very, very much so, yes. Absolutely, and I think that's the idea. Is anytime you can put something together and get an even greater value, that's why you would look at doing something like that. And I feel like we'd the mantra was to be the hub for all things business. And I joke sometimes, the good news is it worked. The bad news is it worked. And so we're in the midst of a whole bunch of things we might not have envisioned, but that's great. That's what we want to do, and I think that's what we were kind of established to do.
We talk about Midland, and the mind automatically goes to downtown and all the things that happen there, but Midland's a pretty good-sized county.
It is.
Let's start with some of the other things happening in the county. For example, the Midland Mall, with its ownership, apparently from what I hear, and I haven't been there in a while, things are really coming along in there.
Yeah, I was there a couple of weeks ago. Flavor Street, which is a new restaurant there, was doing an opening, and yeah, I think their approach, which really makes sense, is one that malls have changed around the whole country. But you still want a place where people are going to shopping, and we're fortunate. All of the kind of what you would think of as the anchor tenants, and then I don't know that a Barnes and Noble's technically the anchor tenant, but that spot is there, fills up a big footprint. Dunham's, I mean, we've got a shoe store. I mean, so they fill up large portions of that, but. You want to have that shopping there as a draw, but then you also need experiential. And I think last year Jordan Dice was at Rotary, and he talked about that, how you bring people in, whether it's a Comic-Con, whether it's a craft show. And I think they've worked very hard on that in terms of bringing people there kind of for experiential opportunities, things that people get excited about. And I think that really makes sense. And I think that, for the malls that are going to navigate, we talked about what a changing world it is in terms of the face of retail from where it was 10, 20 years ago. I always remember, being in downtown Midland with our restaurant, about 1990, all of those legacy businesses, Sears and Penny's and everything that were on Main Street, all the years I grew up, were now gone. They were out at the mall.
Yep.
And downtown had to adjust, and I think thankfully from a lot of leadership we have, and I think are doing well. I think malls are now in all of those places that moved out there. Many of them are now gone themselves, and so how do they kind of navigate from what was their original formation and still be a place where they can draw people in?
What's the impact, the importance of having someone like a Jordan Dice in a community?
To have somebody who lives here locally, is invested, is connected. With the previous team, they had folks, and so you would talk to somebody from another part of the country, but you just don't have that same connectivity. And I think that people, and I've talked to people in the mall, and they see him, they see his team, they have regular conversations. Hey, this would be helpful. Hey, this is a challenge. I think it just makes such a huge difference. It's like with any business, having that interest that's there, having the person that's there and engaged, makes all the difference.
Let me talk about something different here. We've chatted about this before too, and that's regionalization is important, and we've done, at least from where I sit, a fair job of opening up communication between the three major counties, and if you include Isabella, 4. Sure. The one area that we are really lacking in is transportation, getting from point A to point B within the region. Do you see any progress?
Yeah, I think the effort is ongoing. I mean, it never happens as quickly as you might like it. We've got some great regional transportation systems, or rather transportation systems within the region, be it Midland, Bay, Saginaw. But, what's the connectivity and how can we make them work so that it kind of serves our whole region? So I think the efforts are ongoing. Like I said, it never happens as quickly as we might wish it, but I think we do have to. We talk about those other issues of broadband, childcare, housing. Transportation is a huge issue, and that's not going to change. And given our collective size as a region, we have to work together in terms of those solutions, because they're not going to lend itself just to any one community. And more people that live in Bay, work in Midland. People that live in Midland work in Saginaw. There's probably more than we've ever seen. There's this overlap between communities, and so if we can help people to do that, that helps the employers in terms of their workforce, and it helps each of those communities. Well,
let's hope they can figure it out, because right now to get from Saginaw to Midland or Midland to Saginaw is hours, and there's got to be a better way. Just has to be a better way. And And that also brings up service to these entities like the New Corning and HSC and all of that, because they're employing a lot of people. I mean, I think Corning's looking for 1,500, and I think they said they found 1,400 already, something along that lines. And
I mean, it's exciting. Yeah, and you want to help with that. Yeah, like you said, it's got to be transportation. You're gonna have to find a place for all those folks to live.
That's the other one.
And I mentioned childcare and broadband. I mean, those are kind of essential elements that we don't have to do them perfect, but even if we can do them better than some of our other communities, regions in the state or in the country, it gives us a huge advantage.
Yeah. You touched on it earlier, but housing. How are you doing for new housing in Midland, either multifamily or single dwellings?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of folks who are very interested, and so then the process never happens as quickly as you'd like in that area as well. But yeah, we're getting a lot of interest. Jen Acosta's kind of been leading our housing forward and actually working with MSHDA on the whole region, and so I think we're going to see that moving forward. We had a ribbon cutting with River Caddis, or rather groundbreaking, a few weeks ago, and that's going to be 200 apartment units, which is just huge need for. And so that was really exciting to see that move forward. But yeah, I think with housing, and people are looking at it in different ways. I mean, the kind of the housing that we've had here for decades, people have a different mindset in terms of what size house they need, what size lot they need. And so, we've got to be prepared. And I think the city of Midland has done a really nice job of looking at that in terms of their master plan and making adjustments to kind of reflect that. So it's kind of ongoing, but we've been hosting a number of different developers from around the state. And I think when they come here and they see the property in the community, and there are some new tools. MSHDA, give them credit, has been very focused on this area of kind of workforce attainable housing, and I think they've created some new tools that I think we're going to have to look at as a community, because I think these developers, they've got to make the financial model work, and that's understandable, I think. And so I think if as a community we can continue to work towards that, I think we will see a significant investment.
Tony, can you hang through another segment?
Absolutely.
Good. Hang on. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Gotta go.
All right, we're back with you. We're talking to Tony Stamas. He heads up the Midland Business Alliance. Tony, the governor recently agreed to a special election for the 35th Senatorial District, which covers Saginaw Bay and Midland. What's it meant to us to not have representation? You came out of the legislature, so what does that mean when we don't have that representation?
Yeah, it has been really challenging, and I mentioned that kind of a lighthearted way with the great work that Representative Schuette did. But usually you have both of those, both of those legislators in the institutions, and they're very distinctive institutions. And oftentimes people note the partisanship between the two parties, but in my years, oftentimes the division was often between the House and the Senate, because they're and that's how they're set up to be. And so really it is critical for our community, for our region, to have a voice there in that process. And it was a tough budget process. They were faced with, which we all see, kind of a tightening economy, and they were trying to make decisions about priorities. And not having that voice in there was really challenging. I think we like I said, I think we worked with our state representatives from around the region, and they really, again, on a bipartisan basis, stepped up to kind of amplify the voice. But that's kind of how the whole thing is set up, is to have that respective voices in each institution, and not having that. It was disappointing it took so long, but I'm glad that we have those elections on the calendar, and look forward to working with our next state senator,
whoever it is.
Correct.
And there's a big field.
There are some great candidates.
Yeah, it's a big field, and it's going to be interesting. The primary, I think, is February 3rd, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so early February, and and then the general, and then we'll be back into the cycle for the full term.
I was going to say, we won't have the senator that long before they have to run again.
No, we won't. And, I told a few friends, I said, if you like political commercials, next year Michigan will be the place to be because
my hand is up.
We've got governor, we've got U.S. Senate, we've got, our members of Congress, state Senate, state House, Secretary of State, Attorney General. It will be kind of, once again, the epicenter of national politics.
Good for us. Yes. The radio side, anyway. I can't complain about it. We do complain, but we can't complain. It's one of those darned if you do, darned if you don't. So what are you going to do?
Right.
You've been involved for a long time, and as you look at politics today, what are your fears and what do you like about it?
I think it's challenging. I always say that I feel old when I say it never used to be this bad. And I feel that, but then I think probably everybody's always said that at one time or another. I think there's still opportunity, to work together to find solutions. And we see that. And I get the cynicism because I feel that as well. But, I also know the individuals that serve there and they, by and large, you get a few bad characters every now and then, but by and large, the people are there. They want to serve. They want to serve their community. If it seems very divided, well, that's because our country has, it has very different opinions of that. And we've got a division in terms of where the country thinks we should go and who they think should lead us. And I think, that's the legislature is generally a reflection of where the general public is at. So I'm hopeful. I'm an optimist by nature. I think that, this next election will give us a great opportunity to hear from candidates. And, our goal is to be involved. And, we changed term limits, I think, in a positive way because the House, the State House is a co-equal branch. And I think the idea that people can serve there the entire 12 years makes perfect sense. But really, the tool that we were given was for us to be engaged and be informed. And, to talk to our candidates and, in some cases for people to run or get involved. But I think that's really the tool. And I think if we do that, express our frustrations in an appropriate way, I think that's going to serve our whole republic really well.
I've said many times, and I firmly believe this, it doesn't matter which party we send, for example, to Washington or which party we send to Lansing. Obviously, on the big issues, it matters. But when it comes to Michigan, our federal representatives always come through for the state, no matter which party. And I feel that way about our representatives locally that always come through for the region, no matter which party. They've learned to work together that way.
I completely agree. And, we talked infrastructure earlier. We have seen that on the whole process through this. We worked on the federal level with our senators, Senator Peters, Senator Stabenow, now Senator Slotkin, Congressman Kildee, Congresswoman Kristen McDonald-Rivet, Congressman Molinar, and on the state level. When we talked, we had an appropriation $40 million a couple of years ago, and that was Kristen McDonald-Rivet when she was in the state Senate. Representative Schuette really led that effort. So, that's the same thing I see. When we're looking at things like that, where you're looking for solutions and how do you do that, I found they work very well together. And just we need to be involved and engaged. As you mentioned, the special primary comes up February 3rd. That's not a time when people would traditionally think about getting out and voting, but it's important that people do get out and vote, either on that day or ahead of that.
Just out of curiosity, because a lot of chambers have PACs, and they do endorse from time to time, particularly pro-business candidates. Does your chamber have a PAC? Do you do that?
We don't. We never have had that. We've got we're very engaged in terms of advocacy. I've got a great Vice President of Advocacy, Diane Middleton, who does an amazing job. And so we try and, what we've done the last couple cycles is we interview the candidates. We just kind of, obviously we're a business organization, so we come from that spectrum. But we ask them questions in terms of, not gotcha questions, but what their vision is in terms of business in Michigan and the region. And then we share that around. And so, we've talked about with the Senate district about doing that on a regional basis because all of our counties are covered, and I think that makes good sense. So we try and make sure our folks are very informed, they have information, and as we work through, like earlier in this year when we had this paid sick leave and the minimum wage changes, which wasn't just businesses, it was also nonprofits and
Sure.
governmental unities, trying to help them understand that and work through that. But no, we've never endorsed, and we don't have a PAC set up.
Well, Tony, listen, I want to thank you, first of all, for spending the time with us. And it's always fun talking to you. I always learn something.
I always enjoy it, Art. Thanks so much for having me on.
You betcha. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you again.
Look forward to it. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Art. Bye.
Tony Stamas from the Midland Business Alliance. We thank him for joining us today and bringing us up to date on what's happening in that part of the world. We're going to take a break, come back just for a couple of minutes, and get ready to move on.
People don't like me.
Back with you here on WSGW in the waning moments of the hour. I want to tell you about a couple of events that we're involved in. Coming up this Saturday evening at the Temple Theater at 7:30 is the annual Eddie Band Christmas Concert. It's a fabulous, fabulous concert with terrific musicians. And it is also the occasion in which we ask you to bring non-perishable food items, if you can, to the Temple Theater. The Salvation Army will be there to collect all of the items, and I think Charlie Rood's going to be there too. And I will be there. I'll be the MC of the concert. And it's a fabulous, fabulous concert. Starts at 7:30. Doors open at 6:30. And remember, as is always the case with the Eddie Band, it's actually part of the endowment requirement that you are never charged anything. The Eddie Band provides free concerts throughout the year. Their summer series of 6 concerts, or however many they do, are free to you. This concert is free to you. We ask for a non-perishable food donation, but it's not required, but we do ask you to think about it. And you get to hear, hour and a half or a little more of absolutely wonderful, wonderful music put on by outstanding musicians from all over the region. So if you have the opportunity this Saturday, 7:30, Temple Theater, better come early, find parking early in the structure if you have to, because there's also a hockey game at the Dow. I mean, nothing happens downtown, right? Actually, everything happens downtown. It's a busy, busy place. The other thing I want to tell you about is our Lights Before Christmas for Covenant Kids. This is where we invite the local first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMTs, to bring their vehicles, and at 6 o'clock in the evening on 4 successive Wednesdays, light up the lights, blow the sirens, and all the kids look out their windows, because we do it at their wing, and see all of these lights and hear the sirens for a couple of minutes at 6 o'clock. Starts at 5:30 and runs till just after 6 o'clock. That will be Wednesday the 26th, the day before Thanksgiving. Then December 3rd, December 10th, and December 17th. And our connoisseur radio stations will all be represented and playing Christmas music for you. So mark that down. It's on Houghton, just west of the Circle on Houghton between the hospitals. We'll be back with Focus.
I'm attorney Jerry Reif, and I have